Hey everyone, my name is David Eaton, and I am the president and co-founder at Axis, and we exist to help parents and caring adults communicate and understand the teenagers that are in their lives. So currently we're serving 500,000 families a month right now, which is absolutely thrilling to us that we get to be your research assistant. So Dr. Brown, he's actually a board member at Axis. He asked me to talk about the smartphone, and I couldn't think of anything I'd rather talk about more because smartphones, they're the number one battleground right now between schools and parents and their kids. And so I've titled this Smartphones, the stricter the school, the sneakier the students. And you'll notice that I am like up in the corner here. The reason that I am up in the corner is because you are the star of the show. I'm going to introduce multiple different conversations throughout this presentation. I'll actually, whoever's running this should just hit pause whenever we get to those screens, and I want you to turn your neighbor and talk about these amazing pocket rectangles that are changing the way we interact, the way we learn, and the way that we live. And so here's the deal. I want to help you start the smartphone conversation. Axis has studied the smartphone for the last 2 years, especially for a book that we've written. And then also, this has just been a part of Axis because we started it the year the smartphone started. And so I'm going to give you the 4 essential smartphone conversations that you have to have with your kid if you're a parent, but also that you have to have at your school with the parents and with all the students that are there. And so here are the 4 different chapters of this conversation that we're going to have today. And this is going to contextualize the phone, but I'm also going to tell you the best ways to put some boundaries around it too. But again, if you just have boundaries for boundaries' sake, you don't have trust at the center of it all, our kids are going to find a way to sneak around us. As one mom said, she said, having a teenager living in your home is like having live-in tech support, which is awesome until you try to lock them out of something. Okay, so here's the first question. I just want you to turn to your neighbor. And so again, if you're kind of running this presentation, I'm going to ask this question, and then I want you to just hit pause. And I want you guys to talk about it. And whenever you're done talking about it, you'll unpause it and we'll keep going. So the first question is just turn to your neighbor and answer this. What is your yearly phone bill? So maybe think about your monthly phone bill, multiply that by 12 just for your family. What is your yearly phone bill? 3, 2, 1, talk about it and hit pause. Okay, unpause. Okay, if you've noticed, we spend a lot of money on our phones. They become an integral part of our lives and an integral part of our budget. As one dad said to me, he said, David, I spend over $2,000 a year on our family's phones and devices and data plans only to get in a yelling match once a week with my daughters. So is it worth it spending all this money on these phones that cause so much tension? Now, as we get into these 4 conversations, and I'll give you a little context of Axis, I do want you to know that I am going to be messing with you and messing with your mind this entire presentation. And I want you to see if you can figure it out, but I am running an awareness test on you for the next, until this is over. And so at the end, I'll give you a chance to try to figure it out, and someone should try to figure it out. But what am I doing different about this? You have to figure it out. Okay, so we're talking about the phone. It's awesome. I want you to know that Axis exists to be your research assistant. We've been studying student trends for the last 14 years, since 2007. The reason that I started with my friend Jeremiah is because of this picture. This is me. I'm down there at the bottom. I'm on a mission trip, and this is when I was in high school, and this is when I stopped renting my faith from my parents, and I started to own it for myself. And these are 3 of my buddies, Chris, Andrew, and Josh. You can see they all have Bibles in their hands. They're all preaching the gospel on the street corner here. The sad change, they're doing great things around the world, as you can see, but the sad change is the thing that happened in all of their lives once they left high school and went to college. All 3 of these guys became atheists. They're no longer following Jesus. And so that really got my attention. That was such a kick in the face to me. And we started saying at Axis, what can we do to help stop this? And the current scary stat is that 42 million Christian teens will leave Christianity by 2050 if nothing changes. Yikes. And so our belief is that the greatest intervention to reaching the next generation is to equip the caring adults in their lives. So this is you as teachers, and then if you're a parent as well, equipping you to connect with the heart of your kid and disciple them. Tim Keller said this about Access. He says, I wish there were hundreds of groups like Access. We're losing the next generation, and we need help from people like Access to reach teenagers. So yeah, we're going to be there for you, and we're going to help you understand your kids' smartphones, but also we're going to help you understand all of the other things going on in their culture. And so at Access, this is our actual Access. We look at trends, topics, teachers, and themes, and these are the different resources that we have. But just two to point out is one is our culture translator. If you're not signed up for this, you've got to. It's completely free, and it'll help you know what's going on in your kids' world every single week. And so I can tell you, I'm going to teach you some timeless ideas about the smartphone here, but this is going to help you stay ahead of the curve because it's always changing. And there are our conversation kits. These are like a chapel in a box. They're incredible. They will get the conversation going about some tough topics in your school. And here's the deal. As we start talking about the smartphone, again, Access was born the year that the smartphone was born. I remember Steve Jobs holding that phone up in front of the entire audience. The world has never been the same since. And if you've noticed, the next generation, they're delaying getting their driver's license because the smartphone is the new driver's license. And not only is it the new driver's license, it's the new university. And students are having thousands of conversations every single week with their friends on this device. And we had a young lady say to us, she said, David, I only had one real conversation with my dad. And for us, this was just terrible because so much is going to be lost in translation if she's having all of these conversations and being discipled through her phone instead of through her parents. And I know at Christian schools, you exist to partner with parents, which is amazing. And what, as we think about this, in many ways, the smartphone has become the new parent. So what we want to do is invite parents back in the game, invite them back into the conversation with the smartphone, and not just make the smartphone be the adversary. And like I said here, the stricter the school, the sneakier the student. So let's talk about these smartphones. Let's get into it. If your school is made up of smartphone families, and as you think of these wonderful families, if you have kids, think about your own kids. This is my favorite parenting quote. Everyone is born looking for someone looking for them. And so as you think about this and all the tension that comes around a high school student or a junior high student getting a new phone, just remember that day when you were holding your little newborn, or maybe this is my son, his name's Vale. This is a picture of him when he's about 18 months old. So just remember those great, warm, fuzzy feelings. Having a child feels utterly irrational. It's amazing. I know for me, it felt so much like falling in love. But also having a child feels a lot like falling into debt. And if you look at in the United States, I know there's many people who will be watching this who are not from the United States, but it cost, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, almost $250,000 to raise a kid from the ages of 0 to 17. And of course, the phone is a part of that cost. So here's my next question for you. Do you fight or disagree about your school's devices with the students at the school, with the parents at the school? How often? Tell your best story. Talk about it for a minute. 3, 2, 1, go. Someone pause this. Talk about it. Okay, we're back. So there's been so many conversations, so many fights about these phones, and hopefully in your home it doesn't look something like this.
Well, did you have fun? What did you do?
Nothing really.
Did you even hear anything I just said?
I don't know, something about last night.
I'm so sick of this. This is what I'm talking about. You and this freaking phone all the time. Give me it.
What are you doing?
Give me it now. No, that's it. I had enough.
What are you doing?
I had enough. I told you.
Oh my God.
What are you doing?
Give me one reason why I shouldn't throw this in the bowl.
I have to text people back
Why?
because
Whoa,
I have to.
No, that's it. No.
Oh my God.
Stop filming.
I'm sick of it. I do that.
Cool.
I hate you!
Okay, and if you need, therapy is expensive, but you can watch parents break their kids' phones on YouTube. There's plenty of compilations with this. But that's not to the point we want to get to. So let's start the smartphone conversation. Here's the 4 chapters. Gospel, what is it for? Drivers, ed, and trust. Let's start off with the gospel. You're at a Christian school, right? What do we mean by that? Well, I'm going to simplify it to these 3 different steps. God creates a very good world. It becomes cursed. And then, if you're familiar with the Colson Center at all, they love their rewords. And so let's start off with very good. It's very tempting to start off by talking about the smartphone and saying it's just a neutral thing. Well, God didn't make a neutral world. He made a very good world. If you look in Genesis, it says, it's good, 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 and behold, it was very good. So part of the created order is God made the potential for our creativity to make such things like the phone. And if you think about the garden, there wasn't an iPhone tree there. No, but there were the raw materials that it took to make something like this. And so when I was studying engineering in college, one of my hardest professors, he had this quote on his door, Dr. Roger Gonzalez. It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings to search them out. So step 1, if you feel like, especially with your own kids, if you're always complaining about the phone, step back and say, what can you celebrate about something first before you critique it? And then again, what can we celebrate about human ingenuity? And really, the glory of kings. The creativity that goes in this, the collaboration that goes into a phone is the glory of kings. It's the glory of queens. And so as we think about the glory of the phone, it might be a little easier to think about the glory of the pencil.
Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people.
Okay, so that's the glory of the pencil. Now think about that and multiply it by 10,000 and think about the glory of the phone. Now, hey, here's the deal. I just also want to say thank you to all of you. I've really pushed the model for this with the team at the Colson Center and at ACSI so that it could have more interaction in it and even adding videos to it. And it means putting my face in this little green corner up on the side. Okay, so God makes this world very good. Part of it is the human creativity that comes with it and these raw materials, and then we get a phone thousands of years later. So here's my next question. Turn to your neighbor, discuss this for about a minute. What do you love about your phone? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, unpause. I hope you got some great responses to that. I love about my phone, I love how I can have music in my house all the time. I love the directions. I don't need maps anymore because I have Google Maps. I love to be able to communicate. My parents live 800 miles away. It's so great to be able for them to be with their grandkids. It's just the phone is awesome. And so when we think about God's world, God created the world very good. So start off by celebrating. Now, the second thing in this conversation is how has something become cursed? And so this is probably easier for many of us to see the pitfalls and the ditches that come from the phone, but I want you to turn to your neighbor. I want you to have this next conversation. Take a minute for this too. Someone hit pause. What do you hate about your phone? Or is there anything you don't like about how it makes you feel? Take a minute. 3, 2, 1. Do it. Okay, we're back. If you were to ask students what they hate about their phone, they'd hate that it's broken or the screen is cracked. But I think for all of us, some of the common responses are, I'm always available. I'm addicted. I can't step away. I'm having less quality time with the people that I love. So back in the story of the world, God creates the world very good, but then what happens? Adam and Eve, they sin, they disobey, and this fragmentation enters all of reality. And so one of the great ways to think about sin is to think about sin as turning the world upside down or messing the world up, or actually sin as a faceplant on reality, kind of like this faceplant on reality. Okay, so sin is when we take, and this is another thing that's great about the phone, you get videos like this. Here's what Keller says, even though my face is in the way. It's the normal state of the human heart to try to build its identity around something besides God. And if you try to put anything in the place that was originally made for God, it's going to be too small. It's going to rattle around in there. So whenever we start seeing the twistedness of the phone or the brokenness of the phone, it's actually a brokenness of something that is very good. Brene Brown says this: for the most in debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult cohort in U.S. history. And so here's the idea. What is sin? Sin is when you take God's very good world and you mess it up, you turn it upside down, it becomes reductionistic, narrow-minded. Those are other ways to thinking about it, where you just obsess over one part of it, and because of that obsession, you miss the bigger picture of the goodness of it, and things become upside down. Okay, so the gospel, God creates the world very good. Then because of human disobedience, it becomes cursed. And now we have Jesus who enters in the world and shows us a new way to be human, turns the world right side up. And then you have this idea of rewords. So rewords are reconcile or restore or redeem. These are rightly ordered relationships, or as Augustine would say, rightly ordered loves. And so this is being in right relationship with each other, with God, with ourselves, with creation, with our kids, with those who are around us. And so the big conversation to have, the first one here, is how is the phone very good? How is it cursed? And how can we as a school redeem it? How can we redeem it? Second conversation, what is it for? Sounds pretty simple, but this ties into the biblical notion of wisdom. Here it is in Hebrew, it's the word chokmah. Wisdom is doing the right thing the right way at the right time. It's this practical skill of doing things well. And the Bible Project has a great video about this. You should check it out, about Proverbs. But again, the question of what is it for, ask, what is the purpose? Okay, what is the purpose of the device? And so I can definitely say that we'd all agree that the purpose of the phone is not for gossip, addiction, or sexting, but it can be used that way. It's an upside down way of using it. So let's look at each of these. For gossip, this is what Peter Thiel says. He's a founder of PayPal, a lead investor for Facebook. He says, the future promised us flying cars. Instead, we got Twitter. And 140 characters, but now it's 280 characters. And so as we turn that and say, what does Scripture have to say as a bigger picture? It says right down here, it says, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So a way to empathize with your student is they are living in a world of mouth. They are living in a world of gossip. They're living in a world of betrayal. And if you think about what is the opposite of faith, in many ways, the opposite of faith is betrayal. Faith looks at the past and says, can I trust the people that I'm surrounded by and in relationship with? And the opposite of that would be, have I been betrayed by those people? And so the next generation is living in a world of gossip, just to say, and a lot of it's not words. A lot of it's that the images that are posted, what they include and what they leave out. Okay, the next one. is a phone made for addiction? It is not, but in many ways it can be used for that. So here's my next question for you. Turn to your neighbor and discuss this. What is your favorite app and why? Take about a minute for it. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, pause. Okay, here we are. We're back. Usually, like right now, I just love music, so I love the music apps that are out there. But there are so many amazing apps that draw us in and allow us to connect with other people. But there's also many apps that addict us. And so, if you have a kid, or a parent at your school says, "I took my daughter's phone away and she had a psychotic breakdown," it's probably because she's literally chemically addicted to her phone. So dopamine's the brain chemical for pleasure, and phones are designed around this. And so a great exercise is to show, there's plenty of YouTube videos made by third-party non-Christians. You can find some clean ones that talk about dopamine release because of the phone, and just opening the curtain to students and saying, look, that app, Instagram, yeah, it's free. TikTok, yeah, it's free, which means that you're not paying for it, which means you're the product being sold, and your eyeballs are being sold, your attention is being sold. And so dopamine does this. Here's the Teen Smartphone Addiction National Survey from 2018. I know it's a little bit older, but I haven't seen anything newer. 65% of teens wish they had a greater ability to self-limit the amount of time they spend on their phone, and they self-report that. And then if you go down here, this is a scary section. Compulsive phone use. 32% of teens want to stop using their phone but find themselves unable to do so every single day. So asking the question of what is it for, again, gets back to the purpose, the telos, and really the wisdom behind what is a phone for. And I think we'd say, yeah, phone is not for gossip. That's betrayal. A phone, but it can be used that way. A phone is not for addiction, but it has been designed, and many apps are designed to make us powerless and to addict us. And if you think of what's the opposite of hope, hope looks to the future and says, wow, this world's awesome. What's the opposite of hope? Powerlessness. Let's go down here to sexting. We were at a school and there was this young lady who was asked for nudes over and over and over and over again. And eventually what happens? She decided to send another boy a nude photo of herself. So what does this boy do? He shares it with all the other boys at his school. And this young lady hates herself. She feels an incredible amount of shame. And we were at this school and we heard other young ladies say this. They said, I wish boys would ask me for nude photos. And so what blew our minds when we heard this is just the profound reversal of okay, here's the deal. Jamie says this. It's good that she says this. The core of it's good. She's saying, I want to be attractive. So that's good. The sad thing about it is that the way she is seeking that attraction is terrible. So she said, I wish boys would ask me for nude photos. Another school, instead of, there was a young man, he was attractive, and so girls wanted his attention, so they started sending him nude photos to get his attention. He had quite a collection after a while, and then he began selling these pictures to other boys, 3 pictures for $10. And so what the phone does, and before you jump to just remember what it was like when you were 14 years old. Remember what it was like when you were 16 years old. Remember all those hormones just flushing through your brain and through your veins. And just think about what this phone makes possible to someone who hasn't developed that level of discernment, who doesn't have that caring adult in their life helping them understand what is right and what is wrong in this area. Now look, in the United States, and I picked Texas, sexting is very confusing. Because when you have minors selling naked pictures of other minors, that's also known as child pornography. And so a great thing to do, and you could do this on Google in 25 seconds. Just look up a legal website that talks about sexting in your state, and it will tell you some really scary things. And I think it's great to tell this to students because it contextualizes it and it helps scare them. But then the other level, you want to reinforce what is true and what is good. But I think sometimes it's just good to give them a little bit of an understanding of legal situations. But here, this is what you can do. reaffirm their very good sexuality. God made human beings sexual. That is good. That is awesome. But there's a right coordinates for that sexuality, so to speak. There's right boundaries for that. Teach them to say no. They do not have to send photos no matter how much someone asks. A lot of students in your school have never been told that they do not have to send nude photos. They just haven't heard that from their parents or from their teachers. Have a plan for what they should do if when they are sent something inappropriate or asked. This is something to coach parents on. Be safe enough for them to tell you. Be the scapegoat. Say, hey, we have rules against this. Or they can say, and this again, this is more for the parents. Block numbers, tell the school, call the police, and scare the heck out of them with legal code like I just showed you earlier. But when it comes to sexual things on phones like pornography or sexting, you just have to say this to the parents who are in the room. Your kids need you. And look, I mean, I'm a part-time youth pastor. I love the next generation, and I know that some kids don't have parents who are active in their lives. And so they need another adult to stand in the gap for that. But there is no one like a mom or a dad who will fight for their kids. And so I want to tell you that your kids need you. And I have a friend who's a certified sex addiction therapist. He's like, look, if a kid is stuck in habitual patterns of sexting or pornography, they can tell their coach and not much will happen. They can tell the youth pastor and not much will happen. They can tell the principal of the school and not much will happen. They can tell the counselor. That'll help some. But when they tell their parents, that's when things get real. And that's when boundaries are set up. So your kids need you. So what is it for? It's not for gossip. It's not for addiction. It's not for sexting. These things are betrayal, powerlessness, and shame, and really the opposite of faith, hope, and love. Which brings me to a really easy question. When should you get your kid a phone? Take a minute and talk about it. 3, 2, 1, go. Don't you like, I like pause right here and just hold the smile. So I'm assuming that you just unpaused it. This is a question we get all the time at Access, and I want to tell you it's a false question because it assumes two things that are not true. One, it assumes that if your kid doesn't have a phone, that they don't have access to one. So if their friend has a phone, they have access to a phone. They can have their own Snapchat account they manage on their friend's phone. And then the other thing is that when you get your kid a phone, or when the school lets kids have phones, whatever, good luck on that one, right? You don't have to give your kids full access to it. You can severely limit it. So this brings us to our third conversation, which is driver's ed. The phone is as complicated and as dangerous as a car. And just like cars require driver's ed, phone requires phone education. And look, there are plenty of things out there that are designed to subvert adults. This is a calculator app, looks like a calculator, works like a calculator. You type in the secret numerical code, and it will open up a hidden database that you can hide stuff from the adults in your life. So those are scary things. So what should we do? Well, here's the recommendation of Access. The number one thing you can do, and the number one thing that a family can do, is they can have an agreement about their phone. This is not a contract. This is not a covenant. This is a work in progress agreement where they just say, my last name's Eaton. We are the Eaton family. This is how we think about the phone. And so you talk about the 8 domains of the phone. You talk about how to create a path to independence. You talk about how everyone's going to make mistakes here or there, and we're going to have a culture of confession, love, and forgiveness. And as Access has studied these 8 different domains, these are the 8 different areas that parents have to have conversations with their kids about the phone. I wish it was more simple. This is as simple as it gets, but this is the path for that. Next, a lot of parents still don't know about parental controls. And so when screen time came out, it changed the game. Google Family Link for Android phones. Again, this gives parents the power to set bedtimes, which are incredibly important because kids will be on their phone until way late into the night. And it kind of shapes some of those boundaries. But then inside of that, the 2 other recommended resources, and these cost money. One is to introduce discernment when it comes to browsing the internet. Covenant Eyes does that kind of system-wide on phones. It's not perfect, but it's incredibly powerful. It works through a virtual private network. It's the same reason that nurseries have windows at churches. Is because it's just good to have some oversight. And so Covenant Eyes will report back on what happens on the internet, and generally on the phone. And then this is a miracle. It's called Bark. And it came out and it helps do social media monitoring with machine learning. So pretty interesting. Again, you have to pay for that as well. So number one, conversation. How's the phone good? How's it cursed? How can we redeem it as a family? Second one, what is it for? What's the purpose, the telos, the wisdom for how we use it? The third one is all about driver's ed. Hey, we're on a journey of trust with the destination of independence. I don't want to be in the passenger seat with you for the rest of your life, but I want to see you become responsible, and I'm going to slowly train you to get there. And here's some guardrails in the meantime. And then finally, the last one is trust. And I tell you what, Access has created over 300 resources, but all of them point back to one thing, is building that trust between adults and their kids. And so this brings us to the title of this presentation: the stricter the school, the sneakier the student, the stricter the parent, the sneakier the kid. Is this a true statement, or is this a false statement? What do you think? Take a minute and discuss it. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, we're back. Here's the story behind this. A young lady said this to me, and I was trying to help her and her mom negotiate the phone, and she said, David, the stricter the parent, the sneakier the child. And I didn't have an answer when she said that. And something about it sounded profoundly true, but deep inside I was like, there's got to be some kind of sleight of hand here. There's got to be some trick. And so, I love hosting a dinner party. I love asking a great question. So I just made this my dinner party question. I'd be having dinner with a family and I'd say, hey, what do you think about this? The stricter the parent, the sneakier the child. And just watch people answer. And it was a fun conversation. And but I finally came across a grandpa who had the answer to this riddle. And his name was Grandpa Bob, not my grandpa, somebody else's grandpa. And he answered me back this. He said, David, are you raising a sin concealer, or are you raising a sin confessor? Mind blown, right? And you always know the answer is correct when you answer a question with a question. And so his point was, is the phone being an adversary? Is this dividing your family? Or have you modeled what it looks like to confess instead of be a concealer in this area? Another great answer to the stricter the parent, the sneakier the child, or the stricter the school, the sneakier the students, but especially when it comes to parents, is can the kids at your school tell their parents anything? Can they tell their parents anything? So here's one of the last questions here. If you're a parent, discuss this, and actually forget the parent thing and forget the first question. Let's just focus on the second question. Not can your child tell you anything, but could you tell your parents anything? Could you tell your parents anything? Yes or no? Why or why not? Hit pause, talk about it. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, I'm back. Again, this is that primal relationship between a parent and their kids. And the phone can be the chief battleground, and so many parents might feel like they just want to give up. And so again, something to remind students, or actually remind parents, tell parents to tell their kids that they can tell them anything. And then this is something you can tell students. Say you're only as sick as your secrets. This is an AA statement. We're only as sick as our secrets. So again, we've talked about the phone from a big picture perspective. We talked about the 4 essential conversations, the gospel conversation, the what is it for conversation, the driver's ed conversation, but it ends on trust. And I mentioned a story earlier where a young lady said she had only had one real conversation with her dad. And of course, this broke our hearts that she said that, only one real conversation. But then she stopped. And after she said that, she smiled. I'm like, why is she smiling? And she said it again. She said, David, I've only had one real conversation with my dad, but we've never stopped having that one conversation. Here's the deal. We're teachers, right? We're with these students 40 hours a week. We're training them, and we felt the disruption of the phone, and it's very frustrating. And there's plenty of challenges that come with it. And parents are feeling this as well. I just want to encourage you to invest in the one conversation that you're going to have with your students. And that conversation may just last a semester. It may last a couple of years at your school. And then to continue as a school to invest in the parents who are going to have a 60-year conversation with their kids. There's nothing more powerful. There's nothing more leverage than that. And sure, they're going to be talking about the phone for a 10-year period, at least once a week, right? So again, to help equip them for that and help give them that big picture perspective of gospel, what is it for, driver's ed, and trust. And hey, I told you I was going to be messing with your brain with this idea of an awareness test. So I want you to take another just few seconds. You can hit pause again. And I want you to discuss, did you notice anything unique about this presentation? Okay. Was there anything that was different about it in the way that it was put together that got your attention? Take 30 seconds, take a few volunteers and see if anyone can figure it out. Who can figure it out? Who's the most observant? 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, I'm back. I have no idea what your responses were. But the answer is that this entire presentation was designed in black and white. And the reason that I did that is because I wanted to demonstrate that although the phones in our lives are amazing, there's only a certain level of depth that we can have because of them. When everything's mediated by that rectangle, we're just going to miss out on some of the depths of what does it mean to be human. And so here, I'll show you a color picture here. This lovely young lady is my daughter, Shiloh. She's headed into first grade, and this is school picture day, and she's on our front porch just giving me the eye. Sweet young lady. And so just to remind all of us that the phones in our lives, they're very good, they're cursed, and we can definitely redeem them on many levels, but there's still nothing like that face-to-face human interaction. And also, so you know, this entire presentation was built off of years of research that we've done at Axis. And here, if I go back here, this is the book. It's called Smartphone Sanity. You can buy it on Amazon right now. For those of you who want to learn more about the 8 domains of the smartphone, it's inside there. It unpacks those. This is a great gift for parents. And also, what you need to know with this book, sure, it hits on all the ways you can lock your kid's phone down and kind of put some of the power back in the hands of the parent. But there's nothing like the heart connection that happens between a parent and their child. And this book will help parents build trust with their kid, which is so incredibly important. And the book is going to hit on the timeless ideas, and then just know that Axis is going to be in your corner. Our staff shows up every day thinking about the rising generation. We create all kinds of resources. Like I said, 300 different resources. So whether it's the culture translator or our over 90 different parent guides, our conversation kit videos, we've done over 200 expert interviews for our parenting summits. You are going to love this content. And just so you know, we have designed this, one, for families. And so to get all of our resources, it's the cost of Netflix. It's $10 a month. It's awesome. But for an entire organizational community, it's $1,000 a year. And what you're going to see with all these resources, the trends, topics, teachers, and themes, at the center of it is building trust, understanding the rising generation and building trust with them. So for organizations, it's $1,000 a year if you have less than 2,000 people at your school, which is most schools. And then if you've been on this, you've made it to the end. And so if you just tell us at Axis, we will get this to you for $750 a year. We'll give you a discount because you are a part of this. And we love ACSI and we love the Colson Center. And for those of you who have smaller schools who just can't afford this, know that we have scholarships available too, where we severely discount this because we've had generous people make it available. So do not let price get in the way. Again, thank you for joining me and letting me join you in this great conversation. Definitely sign up for the Culture Translator. It's completely free. It's at the Axis website, axis.org. And again, as you think about the smartphones, these incredible devices, they're They have been used to divide generations. The stricter the school, the sneakier the students. I encourage you to pursue relationship with your students. Pursue that trust. Invite them into the conversation, the 4 that we mentioned earlier. And again, may your school be a school not full of concealers, but full of confessors who have been forgiven by Jesus. Thanks again. And if there's any way that Access can serve your school, know that we're here for you. And until next time, bye everyone.